The heavy rain had lasted for days, causing severe landslides throughout the village and cutting off access to many homes. Murky floodwater swept away makeshift paths, leaving behind logs and debris tangled along the riverbanks. A tense, uncertain atmosphere blanketed the entire area as villagers looked on in worry, unsure when they might return to a normal life. Amid the muddy chaos, Jack stood out in a white safety helmet, directing a group of workers along the swollen stream. Dressed in a white shirt with his pant legs rolled up and boots caked in mud, he remained focused as he managed the crew's efforts. The temporary bridge connecting the two hamlets had been completely washed away the night before, and now Jack and his team were trying to deliver food, water and medicine to the families stranded on the other side. A pulley system was set up between the riverbanks, and one by one sacks of rice, boxes of instant noodles, clean water and medicine were carefully clipped onto the rope and slid across, all eyes following each load with quiet tension. On the opposite side, a small group of workers received the supplies, quickly unpacking and distributing them to every household. Voices called out to one another across the river, echoing between the trees, but there were no complaints. Everyone knew they were helping, and that was enough. Jack never took his eyes off the river. Holding a radio in one hand, he coordinated constantly, giving updates and instructions. The temporary bridge was gone. Rebuilding it couldn't happen right away. The rain continued to fall, thick and unrelenting. The sky hung heavy, grey and low. Forecasts warned the weather would worsen and possibly last another week. Jack had more than just project delays to worry about. He was responsible for the safety of the villagers too. He sent people deeper into the mountains to assess risks and began drawing up evacuation plans in case conditions worsened. Suddenly, his phone vibrated in his shirt pocket. It was his mother. Her voice, softer than usual, mentioned she'd been feeling dizzy and had headaches, likely from the changing weather. Jack frowned, speaking gently. "Did you take your medicine? Have you eaten?" She said she had, but still felt tired. He reassured her. "Rest for now, Mum. I'll be late today. Don't wait for dinner. Once I make sure the stranded families are safe, I'll come home." After the call ended, he stood still in the rain for a moment. He couldn't leave, not yet, but his heart tugged with concern for his mother. The cold wind whipped through the air, pushing his raincoat tight against his body. He tightened his grip on his helmet, steadied himself and returned to his post. The expectant eyes watching him from across the river reminded him that he didn't have the luxury of slowing down, not even for a minute. Right now, his presence mattered more than ever. In the middle of endless days of rain and flooding, Tu Tien continued to hold out in the decaying bamboo hut nestled deep within the forest. She patched the roof with old tarps, tying the ropes tightly around bamboo poles to prevent the wind from ripping everything apart. The ground around her was slick with mud. Trees had fallen and branches littered the area, but she kept working. Repairing the beams, adjusting every layer of leaf covering, determined to keep the water out. She refused to return to Jack's house, no matter how grateful she was to him and his mother. Since leaving, her mind often drifted back to the warmth in his mother's eyes, the simple but comforting family meals, and Jack's quiet, steady care. But she couldn't allow herself to keep relying on them. Tien and her former mother-in-law were not the kind to let things go. If she stayed, they would surely come looking for trouble. She couldn't risk dragging kind people like Jack and his mother into her mess. She was still waiting for the village chief to finalize the divorce paperwork. The petition had been submitted, and now she just had to wait for the district court to process it. Every day she reminded herself to be stronger, to live with dignity. Even when life seemed impossibly harsh. That afternoon, as she was folding back the tarp that had blown loose near the edge of the hut, she caught sight of a figure approaching through the rain. A man in a white safety helmet. Jack. He stood there, soaked from head to toe, his eyes filled with concern. "You're really planning to stay in this makeshift shelter?" he asked. "If something happens, who's going to take care of you?" Tu Tien paused, her hands tightening around the rope she was tying. "I'm fine, really. I just need to stay here, wait for the paperwork and figure things out from there. I can't go back to your place. I already owe your mother too much." Jack looked at her for a long moment before nodding. "All right, I won't force you, but if you're going to stay here, at least have what you need to live properly." He walked back to his vehicle and returned with supplies. A brand new tarp, solar-powered lights, bottled water, some dry food, and even a container with boiled chicken and sausages. Tu Tien couldn't hold back the emotion. Her eyes stung with tears. Without saying much, Jack replaced the leaking roof cover, set up the lights on the bamboo wall, and made sure everything was secured. When he finished, he stood and gave her a quiet smile. "I respect your decision. But remember, if you're ever tired, just call me. I'm still here." Ly Tu Tien nodded softly. In the middle of the wilderness, with only the sound of rain and wind around her, his quiet presence was the one thing that reminded her she wasn't entirely alone. As night fell, the forest filled with the soft hum of insects beneath rain-drenched leaves. Inside Tu Tien's small hut, the solar-powered lamp Jack had brought cast a gentle glow across the room. By the tiny wood stove, Tu Tien crouched low, coaxing the fire to life. Her cheeks flushed red from the smoke, but her focus unwavering. Jack sat nearby, threading sausages onto bamboo skewers, preparing a simple dinner under the quiet canopy of the mountains. He placed the skewers over the glowing coals, then carefully unwrapped the boiled chicken he had brought from home, brushing a thin layer of honey over the skin. The scent of roasting meat quickly filled the air, warm and savory. They both exchanged a small smile, the kind that said more than words ever could. It had been so long since Tu Tien had felt an evening like this: warmth, companionship, the crackle of fire, and the comfort of someone just being there. Jack sat across from her, the firelight dancing across his face. He didn't interrupt or press. Instead, he listened. Later, he began sharing stories of his early days on construction sites, being dismissed, underestimated, overlooked because he lacked a degree. He had once slept at the work site, surviving on instant noodles for weeks. But those experiences had shaped him, taught him resilience, and made him value those who struggled in silence. Turning to Tu Tien, his gaze was open and sincere. "If you ever want something different, I can help arrange a steady job for you. Nothing too demanding, not out of pity, but because I believe you deserve a more stable life." Tu Tien shook her head gently, her voice soft. "Thank you, but I think I should keep going to the market. I don't want to rely on anyone anymore. I need to learn how to take care of myself." Jack nodded, respecting her decision. "That's fair. But remember, being strong doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. When you need someone, let them stay." After dinner, Tu Tien quietly cleaned up the little kitchen, wrapping the leftovers with care. Jack stood ready to leave, but after taking a few steps, he paused and turned back. Without a word, he spread his jacket over the bamboo cot, leaned against one of the wooden posts, and pulled out a book from his backpack. The moon rose slowly above the hills, and the gentle rustling of leaves filled the silence in a strangely calming way. Tu Tien looked at him and smiled faintly. "Why haven't you gone home yet?" Without lifting his eyes from the page, he replied quietly, "Not yet. I can't rest easy. You sleep. I'll read a bit, then I'll go." Eventually, Tu Tien's eyes grew heavy and she drifted off to sleep, her expression calmer than it had been in days. Jack glanced at her through the soft glow of the lamp and let out a quiet sigh. He knew she didn't need someone to save her, she just needed someone who wouldn't walk away. And if she let him, he was more than willing to be that person. The early morning light filtered softly through the leaves, casting a pale glow over the quiet hut nestled deep in the forest. Tu Tien stirred awake and was surprised to see CO Jack still sitting against the wall, fast asleep. She quietly reached for her jacket and draped it over him to keep him warm. Jack stirred and opened his eyes, rubbing them in slight embarrassment when he realized he hadn't left as planned. He gave a sheepish smile. "I meant to sit for a while and head home. Guess I fell asleep." Tu Tien poured him a warm cup of water, her gaze gentle. "You should go. It gets cold here." "I'm used to it, but you might catch something." Jack looked around, reluctant to leave. She was still living alone out here in a makeshift hut, the roof barely holding up, the wind rushing in from all sides. He nodded eventually, but before leaving he offered softly, "I'm heading to the site today to check on the landslide area. Do you want to come with me? I think it would be good for you to get away from here for a while." Tu Tien hesitated at first, but then agreed. Part of her was curious to see the kind of work Jack did. Another part simply needed a break. From the hut, from solitude, from everything. They drove together toward the construction site. The recent heavy rains had caused major soil erosion, bringing rocks and mud dangerously close to the road. Jack and his team of engineers carefully inspected each point. He directed the workers to cover exposed areas with tarps, rebuild safety barriers, and mark off dangerous zones with signs. Meanwhile, Ly Tu Tien was assigned to Hoai, one of the site engineers, who guided her through light tasks. She helped organize materials, sort tools, and tidy up the workers' break area. The tasks were simple, but they gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. Binh, who at first seemed distant, gradually softened. Seeing how Tien didn't shy away from dirty work and stayed focused without complaint, her attitude changed. She wasn't warm, but the sharp edges of her demeanor dulled. By midday, Jack visited the hillside villa that was nearing completion. The white house stood out against the mountain backdrop. Workers were tiling floors, painting walls, and finalizing interior details. Jack examined everything closely, nodding with satisfaction as he saw the project progressing as planned. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Jack turned to glance at Ly Tu Tien, who was now carefully scrubbing old paint buckets, her expression far brighter than it had been that morning. And in that moment he realized that it was her quiet strength, her ability to endure and still carry on, that deepened his resolve. He would protect her, no matter what it took. As the sun dipped beyond the horizon, Jack was still reviewing progress at the construction site when his phone rang. It was his mother, and her voice was noticeably weak. She said she'd been feeling dizzy and had a lingering headache all day, likely from the erratic weather. His worry was immediate. He quickly wrapped up his work and drove back with Ly Tu Tien and Hoai in the car. The moment they reached the gate, Jack called out loudly, "Mum, I'm home!" Hoai rushed up to her room, helping her sit up and handing her the medicine, while Ly Tu Tien brought a warm glass of water and sat gently beside the bed. "How are you feeling now, Auntie?" she asked softly. Jack's mother gave a faint smile. "A little better. Probably just a small cold. Don't worry, I'm used to feeling like this now and then." Ly Tu Tien held her hand, her eyes reflecting quiet sincerity. They chatted for a while, talking about the weather, life, and some of the hardships Ly Tu Tien had gone through. Gently patting her hand, Jack's mother said, "Life brings hardship to all of us. What matters is not letting the past chain you down forever. You're a good person. If you live with kindness, someone will see that and value it." Jack sat nearby, silently listening, occasionally glancing at Ly Tu Tien with a look full of affection. Once his mother fell asleep, he took Ly Tu Tien outside and pulled a drawing from his file folder. "I'm thinking of buying a plot of land at the base of the mountain. It's near the main road, close to the market. If you want, you could set up a small shop there. You wouldn't have to live in the forest anymore, and you wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable at my place." Ly Tu Tien was touched but gently shook her head. "I'm thankful to you and your mum, really. But I'm scared. Scared of being judged again. I just want a quiet corner where I can live on my own terms. That's enough for me." At dinner, the mood was lighter. Jack's mother praised the porridge and hot rice, then turned to both Ly Tu Tien and Hoai with a bright smile. "You two worked well today, like real chefs." Hoai managed a forced smile, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of resentment toward the growing closeness between Jack and Ly Tu Tien. Earlier, she had pulled Ly Tu Tien aside in the kitchen and said firmly, "Let me be direct. You shouldn't get too close to Jack. You're not part of his world." Ly Tu Tien didn't respond. She simply bowed her head slightly. She knew exactly who she was, and even more clearly where she stood. But still, tonight she had felt something she hadn't in a long time. A warm dinner, kindness without conditions, and that alone, for her, was enough.
Người từng hứa hẹn bao điều giờ đây lại lạnh lùng đứng nhìn, không một chút do dự. Cô đã không còn gì trong ánh mắt anh ta. Nỗi đau không còn dừng lại ở những lời miệt thị khi mẹ chồng lớn tiếng đuổi cô ra khỏi nhà. Tự tin gần như quỵ xuống. Cô không biết mình đã làm gì sai ngoài việc sinh ra một số phận bất hạnh. Ngày cô về nhà chồng, cô cũng từng e thẹn bước qua bậc cửa này mang theo bao ước mơ về một mái ấm. Nhưng hôm nay cũng chính bậc cửa đó, cô phải rời đi trong tủi nhục, trong sự lạnh lùng của người chồng. Trong ánh mắt khinh bỉ của cả gia đình chồng, cô muốn phản kháng, muốn hỏi chiến rằng anh ta còn chút tình nghĩa nào dành cho cô không. Nhưng rồi cô nhận ra điều đó chẳng còn quan trọng nữa. Cô chỉ là một món đồ bị vứt đi, bị thay thế bởi một người khác. Tự tin bước ra khỏi căn nhà đã từng là tổ ấm của mình, bước chân cô nặng nề như có ai đó trói chặt. Trời không